Welcome to the Lost Signals Reviews, the American Film Institute's Top 100, where we critique the supposed 100 greatest American movies of all time. Join us as we decide if they're worthy of the Mott's Top 100.
Hello there, and welcome back to Lost Signals, reviews the AFI Top 100. Tonight we are doing In the Heat of the Night, which is number 75, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like that. Regardless, I am your host, Scott Thurlow, and I'm here with Luis Duran.
Good evening.
And Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Quite an appropriate title for tonight.
Indeed it is. And Stephen Amosi.
It is oppressively hot out.
Yes, it is quite hot here where we are. And so, without further ado, I'm going to go to the funny log line, and I just have a quick question for you. Back in Soda Town, what do they call you?
They call me Mr. Pibb.
Damn right they do. Waiting all night to say that joke, folks. So there it is.
I'll only do it once.
Yeah.
Got it out the way.
You're welcome. So let's go on to the plot of In the Heat of the Night, which I will break down. So it's essentially a murder mystery, more or less, in a small Mississippi town, Sparta. A visiting detective who happens to be black, who is from a homicide detective in Philadelphia, I believe is visiting his mother or something in a small town, and there happens to be a murder. A very prominent and wealthy businessman who is building a new factory and bringing in jobs to the town gets murdered that night, and the local, more racist to various degrees, white cops are trying to figure it out. They first, of course, suspect Virgil Tibbs, the black police officer played by Sidney Poitier, of the crime. It very quickly comes to light that he's in fact a police officer up north, and his chief asks him to sort of stay in town and help solve the crime. And they sort of have a sort of bumpy, reluctant relationship with the local police chief to figure it out, and chasing down various clues and interviewing various suspects and so forth. He eventually figures it out. So that's pretty much the plot of it. It's a really good police procedural on top of all the other things that are attached to it. So
It's a buddy cop movie if the tension in buddy cop movies was real.
Yeah, it was very real and never went away. It was like seething throughout, for sure. So if we're going to just jump into scores, I'm looking at a 3. I think it was super tightly told, and we'll get, like, a lot of the aspects that make it a good plot, I think, are applied to other questions, like themes, like antagonists, probably even style and dialogue. But I think it was super strong throughout. It just keeps you going. There's not a wasted moment or a wasted scene or, like, where they interview somebody like, well, that was pointless, right? It all ties back into itself. So I'm looking at a pretty strong 3. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I gotta say I agree with the 3, mainly because like you said, Scott, that there wasn't anything wasted. Whenever something was on screen, like, it was giving a little more hint, not to just how the characters' motivations, like how they were approaching the case, but also shedding light on the evidence in the case. And even if it was subtle, you can always call back to it later on in the film.
Yep.
So this has been interesting. That I'd never seen this work. I'd seen the TV show quite a bit. My parents were fond when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to judge every other police procedural I've seen
Against
on this work.
Yeah.
And I watched, to go off a quick tangent here, Wind River recently. And again, I look back on it and am assessing the idea of, in that it's a woman coming in aside from
It's a similar premise.
But the idea of a fish out of water and challenging cultural perceptions. Because I don't necessarily know if a new version of this film necessarily works, because I think that it's established that African Americans make fantastic police officers. In fact, you see that often in television shows now, which the chief or the...
Sure.
But this feels like it broke all of those barriers. And so when it comes down to it, it's at the height of what a police procedural is, but also, as you mentioned earlier, it tackled a lot of very interesting issues.
Yeah.
So I think this is perhaps one of the best in its genre, and it handles the narrative perfectly well. So I didn't know who the villain was until the very end.
You didn't call the killer.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's something I'm shocked about.
And before you go on, Steve, if I didn't mention it, this came out in 1967. So
I'd say it holds up really well for a film that's that old.
Mm. Yeah. I think the reason that it holds up really well, or part of the reason it holds up really well, is because it resonates. But we'll talk about that in themes in a minute. But I think that
the plot of this, as you mentioned, was really tight, start to finish. I was kind of on the edge of my seat. There's a scene, I think the first scene of the movie is him stepping off the train.
Coming off the train. Or a shot of the train coming towards the
like
family.
stepping onto the little stool that they put out.
Right.
And then one of the last shots of the movie is him getting onto the train.
Yeah.
And like the entire movie is built like this, is like built to be this like tightly written, very well made drama.
Mm-hmm.
And like part police procedural, part social commentary piece, and it's the entire thing is built around this base of just good writing and good acting.
Yep.
And
I agree.
I don't really have much more to say other like on top of what you guys said about the plot. I don't want to go like super
in depth
into it for the next 20 minutes or anything, but I thought that there were a lot of great scenes. Like the scene where he gets chased down by the
local ruffian rednecks, essentially,
and then has to like has a standoff with them in the warehouse was really great, like very tense. His like discussion with Endicott at the plantation was really tense. So like this movie is filled with scenes like that are just really well done, and Sidney Poitier is top notch in it as well.
Absolutely.
I also want to mention just quickly that there are 2 red herrings in this work.
Yep.
But unlike a lot of red herrings I've seen recently in film, one, they're pertinent to the plot because they're pertinent to both the themes.
Right.
Which,
yes, for
the
sure.
laziness of like rural policing of let me go for the
obvious easy answer.
Yeah, exactly. And what my preconceptions tell me. And then,
Yeah.
but they also kind of further the narrative, which each of the red herrings leads to solutions. So I think they don't feel like they're red herrings, even though they
because
are.
it ties in
And
so much
they're
more.
really
Exactly,
well
yeah.
done.
Well, yeah. With the red herrings, like as you said, it kind of leads to the next thing. So it forces the characters to realize, like, step out of their comfort zone and just be like, all right, well, no. Now that I can't bring down this plantation, this guy and now that I can't bring down Endicott, like who's the next person?
Right.
It's 3 red herrings then. Sorry, I forgot about that.
Multiple red herrings for sure. You got something, Steve-O?
No, I actually have something that I want to save that I just thought of that I want to save for another question.
Okay,
but
it does look like it's 3s all around.
Yeah,
full 3s
Yeah,
for
I
the
would say
plot.
definitely for me. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go on 2 themes with you, Louis.
I mean, I don't obviously like racism is a broad term, but it's not really. I don't think it's one of the things that I think I saw obviously frequently in the movie. I didn't think, but for me it was more like a tool trying to use as soon as I finished the movie, I kind of started writing down a few things, and one of them was industrial versus rural.
For sure.
So like what Virgil kind of represents. I mean, he's a black educated man from the north coming down, visiting family. He has roots obviously in Mississippi.
Right.
He just so happened to become like the fish out of water, wrong place, wrong time kind of situation. But yeah, like pretty much throwing a wrench into all the inner workings of this rural town where they're ready to jump to conclusions. They're not focusing they're not really focused on the evidence.
Crime.
Yeah, and I say like one of the biggest examples of that is Gillespie, when the Tibbs's chief tells him, says like, no, you should probably stay there and help him out and everything like that. And Virgil's ready to walk out the door, and Gillespie's like, I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I was going to bring
like,
up that scene.
Officer, and he even calls him like he actually gives him the status that Virgil's probably fought his whole life to attain, and not like I don't think he was pandering to him or anything like that, but he was.
He's appealing to.
He's talking to him like a man should, and I think that's what kind of triggers Virgil. But even then, like later on in the film, when I would assume everyone wants Endicott to be the guy that pulled the trigger on Colbert, and he finds out like when they're talking over the car, and he's like, "You just give me one more day, like give me 2 more days, and I'll bring this guy down from this hill." And
yep.
Even Gillespie's taken aback. He's like, "You're just like us." It's a very crazy, like tense moment where you don't really see in like you were talking about procedurals and everything like that. So
yeah.
Besides that, I mean, there's like other overlying things. One thing I'd really thought was kind of strange but I kind of dug how the motifs of sweets. So I don't know if you guys noticed people are drinking soda.
Yeah,
the marble cake, which is obviously the infusion of vanilla and chocolate cake. Like all those little subtleties, the cream pie thing that we talked about prior to
the cream pie thing.
Yeah,
we'll come back.
We'll come back to that. But no, the sweets as a motif is kind of I don't know, maybe almost a willful ignorance, or there's innuendo in there.
Sure.
That hopefully I'm hoping you guys kind of pull a little from that. Just trying to shoot out ideas and things. So I feel like this was really well impacted, and of course the title of the movie, In the Heat of the Night. One of the first when we're introduced to Gillespie, he's got a broken AC window, AC, and that's just kind of
a recurring kind of thing.
That's kind of the standard for not only the police department, the town, how they just go about their life, their lives, pretty much. Just well, I'm just gonna hit it until it works, and then if not, we'll try to find a solution to the symptom rather than to the real situations.
If you mind me jumping in, the rural versus industrial aspect is because it's weird about the power dynamics in here.
Yeah, true.
Because Virgil is probably the most intelligent person in this work, at least in those main characters, at least the most qualified when it comes to policing.
Yep.
And I felt that the chief always, again, he has the broken air conditioning. He's stuck in this small town. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have and it always and even though he is racist, and not as racist as the rest of the town, very nuanced,
but to an extent,
needs and is willing to accept the help of someone because he has to accept the fact that he's a lesser to a person he inherently believes is a lesser.
Yeah, exactly. He's reluctant to do that, but he's sort of forced to because he does recognize maybe his characters. But to that point, he recognizes himself that he just is not qualified. He knows he's sort of out of his league.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that everyone has their prejudice in here. No, there's no perfect character. There's no completely innocent character in this.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's exactly that's what I was writing down before. You mentioned it, Louis, when Virgil reveals his own, I don't know if I want to call it prejudice, but
his bias, his perceptions.
Yeah, when he says he was blinded by wanting to take down Endicott, and the chief says, "You're just like you're just like me." That was a line that stuck with me because that's huge for both of their parts, right? It kind of takes Virgil down a peg, and the chief it takes Virgil down a peg in his own mind, but it raises him up in the chief's mind, right? Which is really interesting. In this one fell swoop, they change the perception of this character in the two main characters' minds.
Sure.
And in different ways. It's really, I thought that was a really cool line.
Yeah. To go off on that scene in particular, right before then, Tibbs is telling Gillespie, oh, here's what I found in the scene. Here's what we're kind of looking for. And then he lets him do the interrogating. And he sees, the way he does his police work. I guess panders, or he goes to the sensibilities of Endicott.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just I like this fig. I like this fig. And he's like, oh, and then he just
orchids.
Yeah, the orchids.
He sort of
traps
him almost to admitting.
He's he's just he's letting him try to appeal to what he knows, what kind of person that he is. And Gillespie just sits back until they finally hear the magic word. And he's just no, we just came here to talk to you about, Colbert and everything like that. And then that's when Endicott sees the end game, or the strategy that they had.
Yeah, what was really going on.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, you guys are all right. I don't have much more to add because you covered a lot of it. I think the themes are very in-depth and very well covered throughout. They were sort of obvious, but just very well handled. They weren't on the nose. They weren't dropping an anvil on you, but it was contained. They never forgot the fact that this is what's happening. This is the sort of conflict and the tension throughout of this setup and this story and these characters. So I think I'm going to give it a pretty strong one. It looks like you guys probably are as well. I don't know if there's any others, but if you got one, go ahead and hit me.
You mentioned the the title and the temperature as a big thing. This is a theme that I think, if done well, works really well in movies. The heat ramping up tension in movies.
Sort of a do the right thing kind of thing.
What it reminded me of, do the right thing is the latest in a line
of this.
Maybe not the latest ever, but
say probably one of the most successful.
The one that I thought of immediately when I was watching this movie was 12 Angry Men.
Oh, good one too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like the ramping up the tension, the heat, and like complaining more and more about the heat as it goes on. Like his thing with the air conditioner, I think might have been even a reference to that. You know, and
that's a good point.
I think that's a well used trope because there is actually evidence that being hot makes you more aggressive and like angrier.
And
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Fuck you, dude. But no, that's a good point. You're right, and I think that it adds that's a layer as well that you can add to it. That all sort of is evidence for me, if you will, no pun intended, of to why this movie handles its themes so well.
So I just have one last thing to say because you brought up sweets, Louis, and I've been thinking about it the entire time while everyone else was talking. So there are two aspects of Virgil doesn't eat that many, or doesn't have the opportunity to. In fact, the one time he does, he's denied service at the diner.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
But the one time he is offered it, it's at the plantation, and with this lemonade.
With the lemonade.
Well, actually, he asked for it.
He asked for it.
He asked for it, yeah.
And he's given it, but he doesn't drink it
Sure.
because it falls apart beforehand. So I imagine I'm going to take a stab at this because I didn't think about it during the movie. Kind of the wealth and decadence of being able to enjoy a dessert and to enjoy a sweet instead of having to
almost wasting it, but good.
I mean, I would say like a lot of the characters that have soda and stuff like that. Clearly, he's the richest person. Virgil Tibbs is the richest person in this movie, other than Endicott.
But it's
right?
the perception of, I think, given that luxury.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
I can see that for sure.
And
for me,
I'd
say, like it could also be a substitute for, not maybe the lifestyle that they're living because Wood is having a pie, and was it Harvey? Right? That's the guy that at the end?
Yeah, Harvey's the guy that gets thrown in jail.
No, I'm sorry. The guy that ends up killing
the creepy diner guy. I don't even remember his name. The actual murderer.
The actual murderer at the diner. Like he literally hides the pie. Like he's hiding the pie that Sam Wood wants.
Yeah.
But also like what was Dolores? Like Dolores having her Coke. Like she's like at the police station. She's like, I really wish I could. Like I just wanted to have like a chill Coke.
Yeah.
And she has it shirtless. Pretty much every night for any guy to see. So like I feel like it's the subtleties
not there
of
for no
different characters.
reason. Yeah.
Maybe it represents different things for different characters.
Perhaps?
Probably, desires in a way. Maybe
perhaps. Yeah.
I say like that's why I thought maybe it was like is innuendo. Like it's a sexual thing. Like it's having the forbidden fruit, so to speak.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is the one time that Virgil has an opportunity to have the sweets, it's brought to him by a house slave in a sense. Although it's not in like
not what you think of, but more or less,
and pretty much anything but name. I would say,
yeah.
And it's I don't know. I think that kind of like what you want, what you desire, that kind of aspect to it, which is a fitting for.
No, I certainly see that, and I do think it can tie in. And again, even better evidence for like how this movie balances all those kind of things throughout, and never loses sight of any of them. And they're all they shine through clearly, but again, without overwhelming you. But it's always there, and it's always commented upon it in some way.
Absolutely.
All right, so one's all around for themes.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to antagonist. That'll be you, E.
Well, obviously the murderer is the broad antagonist here.
Never trust creepy diner guys.
Yeah, Norman Bates.
Good thing we're not surrounded by diners. Right?
No, it's diner. It's faculty's owned by one creepy guy.
Yeah,
who
owned, serviced, and run by. Yeah, go on.
But obviously, that's his guilt is, or him being the antagonist is the least interesting part of this work. It's more so everything we mentioned in themes with the conflicts between racism and prejudice,
people's perceptions, people's dispositions.
Society's the antagonist.
Yeah, of course. It's not my fault. Society made me this way.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean that's the murderer is the guy that he's chasing the entire movie, but I don't feel he's antagonized by him at all. He's more antagonized by the town at large.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that is more. I would call the town in general the antagonist,
or at least the mindset of the people in the town.
He gets chased down by some racist guys that try to beat him with a goddamn chain and a
shovel.
Whatever.
Yeah, just lynch him. Yeah, they were just want to lynch him.
And he even has to overcome all that just with the police chief, who should be the easiest guy to convince, like in the town.
He was,
and
he was kind of the only guy that came around.
Exactly. See, but relative to the other characters,
well, the widow actually was probably the nicest of all of them.
That's true.
The strictest one.
But she's from Chicago.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So that's why.
And I think she's a strict meritocracy type. Like this guy's the person most qualified to find my husband.
You bumblefucks, we're never going to figure this out. This guy knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He's from the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Am I in this backwater town for?
Yeah, so go on.
Yeah,
but I do agree, though, that I think that's more of the antagonist force here versus, like, the murderer himself, in a sense.
Absolutely.
I don't have much more to say.
I think that's a very strong antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he did feel very antagonized throughout the movie, just not by the murderer. Like, that guy was the least antagonizing guy in town.
Well, I guess you could say he was antagonized by trying to solve the crime, but while doing that, he was faced against everything we just said.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So I'm going to give it a strong 1 for antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
But the murderer could have been fucking anybody in town. It wouldn't have mattered.
Sure. 1's all around? 1, Louis? Antagonist?
Yes.
I'll allow it.
All right.
No.
Points.
No.
All right, well, Steve-O, you can go on, in fact, with protagonist.
Virgil Tibbs.
That's Mr. Tibbs to you.
Yeah, detective.
Call him Mr.
Detective
Tibbs.
Tibbs. Only when he's in Philadelphia, I guess?
Gun in your
I don't
badge.
know.
Yeah.
Your gun in your badge.
off the
Sidney
case.
Poitier, amazing actor. Did an incredible job in this movie.
Yep.
Outside of that, the character was really well drawn and had a great arc. Just like,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm glad that he never fully came to terms with really anybody in town. It wasn't like he hugged everybody.
They had a begrudging respect at best.
Exactly. At the end, they threw him a parade. Yeah. At the end, he shook hands with Gillespie and was on his way.
I was like, I hope I never come back to this fucking town again.
I'll never be here again.
Yeah.
Enjoy your life.
Yeah.
And that was basically it. And
you take
his
care
whole you can see that he's changed by the experience, but it wasn't like, we changed society because of this.
Exactly.
It was like the two main characters, him and Gillespie, have this respect for each other for sure at the end, but it's not like he's gonna wander into town back into that town again and expect a warm welcome or anything like that, which I really like. And that was brought out really well through his character and all of his interactions with people there. He was just trying to do his job, and honestly, he's probably mostly bullheaded. He probably should have got the hell out of there days before he did, but he needed to solve that murder, and that was what he did.
Sure, goody.
I want to see a addendum to this movie where he returns back to Philadelphia.
Well, I thought
funny story. You can watch the sequel called "Call Me Mr. Tibbs."
Does he tell the story of what went on here? Because I kind of want to see that.
I don't know.
You wouldn't believe this shit visit I had down in Mississippi.
Sure.
I think that would.
And anybody that had been to Mississippi would be like, I can believe you for sure.
Well, if it were on the list, perhaps we would have done the follow up. But I'm not. Again, I don't have much more to add on to you because you cover a lot of it. Yeah, I agree. Sidney Poitier did an amazing job because he's an amazing actor, and also the character is written so well. And again, you could see his struggles and what he was facing, but he wanted to solve the crime, but he hated this town. But he knew it was he's the only guy who's probably going to be able to do it anyways, even though he's reluctant to stay there because of all the tension he was facing.
Yeah.
So it was just a solid job throughout. And I was going to ask you guys this question. Would you count the Chief as well as a protagonist?
I would.
It's a good question.
Chief Wiggums is great.
Chief Wiggums.
He's a little more confident than Chief Wiggums,
Oscar
but not
award-winning
much.
Chief Wiggums. Academy Award-winning Chief Wiggums.
All right. I need to correct you guys. It's just Chief Wiggum. There's no S at the end of his name.
Sure. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for that correction.
In plural.
All the Chief Wiggums.
But I'm saying, if that were the case, then I think I'm more on the side of counting Chief Gillespie as almost a 60-40 split. But I think he's there a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's him and Virgil playing off each other.
I agree. It's just as much as his story as it is Virgil's. So
Exactly.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it's definitely. It was. I mean, there's a reason why he sees him off on the train. I'd say not only the path that they took and everything, and he just says to him hey, you take care now, you hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was as much respect as they're going to give each other, but that was like enough, it seemed,
and
for
they
both.
do,
He carried his bag for
and they do
crying out
have
loud.
like perfectly
You're right, little moments like
aligning
that.
arcs, like character arcs,
Yeah.
which worked really well for the both of them. Like both kind of realizing the other's value, I guess.
Yeah, they were like
throughout
foils for each other almost.
Yeah.
They're both saying, "I don't like you, but I respect you."
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And so let's work together for the greater good, in a sense.
Although I would say Virgil was the far more respectable of the two.
Yes, of course. But I'm just saying, I
Chief
would...
Gillespie didn't do much, but
I mean, Gillespie's no expert.
Yeah.
Like, bless his heart.
And he admitted it, at least.
at least he's willing to admit it.
Exactly.
So all I'm saying is, like, I think you can give them both credit for protagonists. I think they both did a great job.
Yeah,
Even though
yeah.
Sidney Poitier, of course, is a standout as Virgil Tibbs.
Yeah.
All right, so
one for me.
Yep,
for
one's
sure.
all around.
Ones.
them. And that'll bring me to secondary / supporting characters. So I guess, like, I'm probably going to toss it to you guys. I'm probably looking at a solid 1. The town was fleshed out pretty well. Like, I'm not even going to name one. I'll go to you after this, but I'm probably just going to generally give it a 1 because I think the town was believable with all the various ones that did like inhabit it and what their role was within the town, and when he was figuring out like who they are and how they relate to each other. So go ahead, hit me with one you like.
I thought that this was a really strong category. Actually, there were so many good side characters that just even the ones
they were
that
solid to
even
good,
the ones
but...
that didn't have a ton of screen time made this town seem like a town.
Yes, well, that's
Yeah.
what I was saying.
And like it definitely did seem like a southern town. There was, you had I'm just gonna name a couple of them. I'll leave a bunch,
Good.
but you had Sam, the obvious one. You start the movie with him basically like doing his drive, his
The bumbling police officer,
his 3
more or
a.m.
less.
like
Yeah.
ride through the town. You had one I want to mention is Mama Kaleba, I think is how you pronounce her name, who was like in the movie for 5 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
She was the woman that you go to perform to get an abortion in town, and like it was weird. Like she had this like strangely very emotional scene, and she showed like a pretty good range of emotion there, and it was just like your only introduction into kind of the black section of town, basically, right? And it was like, this is where people go. This is where the rich white folks go to get their abortions. Like, just a very strange, like, underside of the town that you didn't really see much, So, I'll leave it at 2 for now. I'll let you guys name a few if you want to, and I can rattle off a couple more if need be.
Well, since I have been chased out of a town in Oklahoma at gunpoint, I have to say this is a very accurate portrayal of that. But I think that the mayor gave a lot of the supporting characters had very bit pieces.
But they added a lot. I think you might want to say.
Look, like the mayor gave a look into the politics of that town. Like we need to help out the widowed. I want the city the detective to figure this out, and like, well, we have to appease her, but get him out of here before he goes. Like it's interesting to see how like the town is built through these small little pieces you're given opportunity to see.
Absolutely.
No, Oh, sorry. I don't know.
You got one you like, Lou?
No, I mean, it's strange that like you can think about just about every character, and even the subtle moments. There's so much. I mean, this will go into dialogue as well. Like the things that they say is very telling of the character and just like shaping the world around them. Like for me, it's really bizarre, but the guy taking photographs of Colbert's body, like clearly it's one of the first things he's actually excited about it. He's like, yeah, and even Gillespie's like, yeah, take angles from it. Take photos of all different angles.
Yep.
Want to make sure he looks good, essentially. And then he comes in and he's like, all right, well, who's gonna pay me? Like I've never done this before, but we're all kind of just winging it.
Yeah.
And I feel like, like this, it's just one of those things. Like this never happens. I wouldn't even know what would happen in this hypothetical town if it was a second murder. But
that's funny.
The crazy thing is like maybe they would learn from their their misconceptions or their failings in the first part. That like it's just one of those things that I don't know. It was a really weird occasion that just really stuck out with me.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was great. And he comes back a little bit later and like tries to sell the pictures to them. He's basically like, I need to get paid for these.
Yeah, well, that's what he was saying.
Write it up with the.
They're like, the department will pay, I guess.
Yeah,
he's like, just bill to the department. Like,
I love that.
Clearly, nobody's done that. Even the parts with like the doctor and everything, and Tibbs is examining the body.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, I mean, he doesn't even try to outright call him out, but he asks us, he's like, yeah, these markings would be, like the rigor would be setting in, so and so, right?
Yeah, he basically he's smarter than the fucking local coroner.
Yeah,
essentially.
The coroner's all fumbling about and everything, and it's just, there wasn't wasted space for acting or dialogue in my opinion.
No, and I will prove it even further with this next 2 or 3 minutes that I'm going to tell you guys about all the rest of the side characters. Harvey,
the
original guy that they brought in for the murder, had a great arc. Really, he came around he started off
he had depth
hating,
to him.
Yeah, he started off hating Virgil. Came around
as everyone in town does.
After Virgil bribes him with a cheeseburger with onions on it. He's like, now you're talking. That was a great scene. He had Dolores and Bertie, her brother.
Her brother, right? Yeah.
Who had their whole weird scene, and when Bertie gets murdered at the end of the movie, and Dolores is left alone, you're kind of left to think what the hell's gonna happen to her now, right? That's depth for a character.
For sure. You got Endicott, which we mentioned, but
you got Endicott, who's mostly just a piece of shit racist, right? But even
but not a murderer.
The scene after he gets slapped and then he tries to make the cop basically string Virgil up, and he's like, we'll see what'll happen or whatever. They walk out and he cries at the end of that scene. Was so weird and disaffected. It was just a very strange thing. You had Mrs. Colbert in her, she doesn't change much as a character, but
the grief-stricken widow. But
yeah, exactly. You have her
to know what's happening
in a pretty good scene where she goes, she basically steamrolls the entire police in that town and just goes straight to the mayor and is like, get this shit done, or else I'm taking all my business out of here.
The thing is,
one
she
of
has leverage on them.
The strong move of this movie is done by a female character, which for 1967 is pretty
impressive. Sure,
yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You didn't see that often, at least back in the day.
I think that's all the characters that I wanted to mention, but that's a lot. That's a lot of supporting characters that all have important parts.
I'd say, go to another thing. I forgot Mrs. Colbert. She sees them bickering within them and seeing all the tension and everything. She's just like, "What's wrong with you people? My husband's murdered. My husband was murdered.
Let this guy do his fucking job.
Do your job and catch this guy or
or whoever it was.
It's just there's really not much to say. There's a beat and then they're just like, all right, we should probably do what she says.
Yeah, because she has leverage
why we're
on
here,
them.
Right?
Not for a single second is she a romantic interest. She is just the toughest motherfucker in town, basically.
Aside from Virgil,
that's her entire part,
But sure, and all that is evidence. I agree, of course, to give it a very strong one in secondary because it's so fleshed out and they're so well done, and they have such a good dynamic with each other and how they all add to the town at large.
Yeah.
So looks like one's all around for that.
Yeah.
All right, and this is another good one. Dialogue with you, Louis.
So dialogue was, I'd say. I mean, we're giving a lot of praise to this movie, but dialogue was
probably one of the strongest as well.
Definitely one of the strongest things because just almost everything you could probably pick apart the script and just about everything has double meaning,
or at least layers to it.
You could you just see, you could sense the tension. I mean, I should have written this down actually prior to knowing that I was doing dialogue. But yeah, we talked about the pie thing, the diner guy, talking to Sam when he's like, "Oh, I know how much you like the cream pie," and he's just even the officer's just like, "I told you, no, none of that funny business or whatever." And you in retrospect, you're thinking just did they just say that?
Yeah.
And obviously there's and one of the first things that you see prior to Sam Wood meeting Virgil and taking him into the station is that the guy from the diner offers him a marble cake, which is a mix of vanilla and chocolate cake. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, I don't like any of that. And guess what? You're about to get a lot of chocolate cake in your business, man. You don't know it, but yeah, just things like that. The Mr. Tibbs thing. I mean, that's an iconic line.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you guys.
So, sorry.
You guys mentioned a whole bunch of them. We even just in passing like I'm not an expert, that's why I need you. Like all of those interactions, and when Giuseppe, the chief, and Virgil Tibbs are forming like again a reluctant working relationship. Like a lot of the exchanges, like, "Oh, you're just like me," like when you mentioned that line, like all that shit was fucking top notch. It was just I don't know, it was snappy, but it was just real and gritty and made sense. Like to me, like I believed every single word that every single character was saying. So
it's one of the most the realest movies I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's. I was gonna say that like the more I think about this movie, it's one of the this is the first time I've seen it, and I was really impressed with it when I saw it. And the more I think about it, it might be one of the best movies I've seen in a very long time.
Sure.
The way that they talk to Virgil the entire movie is very deliberate. Like they call him, everyone in town calls him Boy the entire movie until the very end,
and other worse names as well.
Yeah, well, of course, but like until the very end when he is leaving on that platform and he finally gets his due from Gillespie, you know, whatever. But like, just having that was probably an obvious choice as the scriptwriter. Like that's kind of the way that people in the South in 1965 or whatever talked to anyone who was black there, right? Like,
yeah.
But the fact that they did it in such a way that it drew, it's almost like grimace worthy a lot of times to listen to this.
It's uncomfortable at points,
to listen
for
to this,
sure.
and that was exactly the point. It was like we're doing the opposite of what is happening in everyday life at that point, which is to make that type of speech like normal, like normalized. They want to draw attention to how messed up it is.
Yes.
And this script does an incredible job at it. So I'm going to give dialogue. This might be the strongest point in the movie, if not very close to it.
Sure.
I also particularly not only how they talk to Virgil, but how they talk about him when he's gone.
Yeah.
I think is also
you're right. That's a good,
very well done
point, but for sure. Yeah, so hell yeah, looks like strong ones all around for dialogue.
This is getting a 10, by the way. So,
I think it is. Yeah, I wasn't going to mention it.
It's
like don't talk to the pitcher when he's throwing a no-hitter or anything.
Yeah,
but it is looking like a 10. So speaking of that, why don't we go on to style with Yui?
Well, I'm going to start off with what I think everyone agrees with. It gets a 1 simply for Ray Charles.
For the theme song?
Ray Charles. Quincy Jones does the entire soundtrack.
That's what I was thinking of. I couldn't place it. Yeah.
Quincy Jones does the entire soundtrack. It's awesome.
Sure.
But we already mentioned that genre-wise, as a police procedural, this is the height of that genre. It's a little bit dated nowadays in certain
but not
aspects.
Much.
But yeah, never that it takes away. But I don't know. I just think this is very well crafted. With, for instance, what's the plantation owner's name?
Endicott.
Like his area and all of the flowers that he's growing, and how he transforms that into a metaphor of his opinion on race.
Yeah, exactly.
But in every single area, from the chief's house to the police station, all of it's well crafted with a lot of detail in it, and a lot of care was put into this film. That we said everything that. Supporting characters, we mentioned that a lot of detail was put into that. Dialogue, a lot of care was put into that.
Same thing with style, yeah.
Style is no different, and that's why I think this is on AFI Top 100, and why I will compare every police procedural I've seen to this from now on.
I might even say it should be higher.
See, now I was waiting to get to that because I 100% agree that it should be, I don't know, at least mid field, if not like 40s, 30s even. Rather than back at 75 because of all that. But I don't much more to say about style, just that it was one of the other many layers that this movie did so well. And I would say the opening shot, from the opening shot of the train coming in, and with the soundtrack playing over it, you're like, yeah, that's fucking awesome. And it kept up throughout. There was some great, I'll just mention one scene that stuck out in my mind when the cops were chasing Harvey, the original suspect, like over the bridge. If you remember that, like it was a huge pan out shot of almost like silhouettes running across the bridge.
Yeah.
Like,
and when he chases
cool.
him down to the car, he's like, I got him, boys. And then just like slowly drives the car.
Like, everything you guys said, and certainly the shots, just the way it was shot itself, as well as integrated into the narrative, I think is a really strong one for style.
Oh, absolutely. This movie, from the sound design to the shot, to the cinematography, to the acting, to everything about the style of this movie is awesome. There are
a few nitpicky
things
dated
that might be outdated,
sure,
but like it doesn't take away from it at all. Actually, right after we said that, I have to give credit to the director. His name is Norman Jewison. He did a couple of. He did like Moonstruck.
I didn't recognize his name when I saw it.
Yeah, he's a fairly big director, but not huge. But the job that he did in this flick was top notch, and I gotta give him credit for that. So I just want to give him a shout out. Style's gonna be a strong one for me.
Yep, good.
I just have one final thing I'll say. In retrospect, if you look back upon this film, you get all the clues of who's the murderer.
Yeah.
But
on a fresh watch,
on a first watch, you'll never pick it out.
Yeah, that's true. Even the police procedural itself is fucking awesome. Well, though, okay, fine.
Unless you're super genre savvy.
Sorry. The first scene with it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you watch it again.
And I'm not saying that I think you mentioned the second time that character appears.
The last time he appears before you find
it's revealed.
Out
I was saying the first scene tells you everything you need to know about who's and his motivation and everything. And I did not pick it up at all.
Sort of like a fridge brilliance bonus, but you're right about that, and that just again speaks to how well the style was done. All right, so one's all around for that, and it'll bring us to finally recommendation. Do you recommend it, Stephen or Mosi?
Watch this movie. It's a great movie. It is ahead of its time in a lot of ways, especially in the discussion of race in the 60s. I'm sure there were other movies around that time that talked about the same type of subject matter, but this one is one that
fucking nails it.
That gets it right and furthers the discussion. There's a lot wrong with race relations in America in the 60s. There's a lot wrong with race relations in America right now. So it talks about all that stuff through a narrative that is
compelling,
very compelling, and doesn't like hammer on it in an awkward way or anything. It just says,
it doesn't feel like it's slapping you in the face with stuff.
It says here's what race relations in America are like right now. Here are the ways that people deal with it, and here are the ways that people try to get along on their lives, and in doing so, kind of maybe make things incrementally better as they do.
Or at least learn a perspective from someone other than you.
And I love that. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to give it a very strong one for recommendation. Sounds like we're going to have 10s all around, I think.
Yeah, I think so. What do you recommend it? Ian, Louis? I think you do.
If you feel nostalgic about, what a 1960s Sparta, Mississippi was like, I recommend it.
I do.
I know you do. But no, I mean, if you love filmmaking, you feel back. Sidney Poitier is phenomenal in this. Even Ride Steiger, like I got to give him credit when it's due. Like the guy won an Oscar. It won Best Picture in 1967, man, and we might be years removed from it. But like racism and everything is still really relevant. In this day and age, and this is just a movie that represents it in a way where it's not something you're not being force fed to be like, hey, maybe I am a bad guy, because it hits you in kind of all different sides. You want to see one person just like the characters in the movie. You want to like you think all the evidence is stacked against them. You want to throw the book at them, and guess what? No, it's a turn, and now you need to rethink about it's just everything. Like you can't always rely on your preconceived notions. But regardless, to get a little levity, see this damn movie.
Well, it is perhaps, as I mentioned already, one of the best police procedurals. So many good movies that come out since, like about law enforcement, like Paul Blart Mall Cop 2.
Yeah.
And
I put them both in the same category. So I put Paul Blart right next to Hidden Night.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's trying to get past its own limitations.
Ride Along.
So much out there. But I just say that, yes, I fully recommend this. And I might even say required watching. If you're a fan of film.
I think that's well said. Yeah, of course I recommend it. You guys said a lot of it. Like, it's unfortunate that it's like still like prescient, but it just says a lot about it, and it's just a goddamn well done, put together film that deserves to be watched. And if you haven't seen it before, yeah, go see it. And if it's been a while, see it again. And like I said, you brought it up earlier, Steve. I was going to bring it up here that I think it should be higher on the list. I think probably one or two things could be bumped out and switched around because it still stands and it's still excellent. And we're all giving it a 10. I don't even need to look at the fucking scores. It's a perfect 10, and I do indeed think it is a perfect 10 movie.
10s? Do you think it's a perfect 10?
I honestly thought we were going to give it like a 9.
Yeah.
Maybe like...
Somebody took a point off from here and there for something, but...
I was closely taking a point off for style.
Yeah?
Just because... there's like the filming and everything was nothing much to write home about. The music was awesome.
But, by the way, may I explain what this is? Because I usually give a short explanation. If we give a movie a perfect 10 with all of us, then I ask, do you think it deserves a perfect 10? So that's what we're...
It's a tradition that we do, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been on for a perfect 10, but I was hesitant. But I'm comfortable with giving it a 10. Honestly, after rewatching it, like I watched this movie many years ago, and I enjoyed every bit of it. But now sitting there talking with you guys and everything, I think this is a 10 movie for sure.
I would agree with that.
If it got like a 9.5, something like that, I wouldn't be upset.
Mm-hmm.
But giving it a 10, I'd also agree with. I don't think I could deduct a point for anything, and nor do I want to find something to nitpick about.
Yeah.
I mean, all the nitpicks we have are so super small compared to the strength of it. So
right,
yeah, exactly.
I would say, for me, if you asked me yesterday, I would probably give it a 10 and say maybe it's not like a 10 movie on my random
arbitrary
scale. But the more I think about it, the more I think it is a 10
you
movie.
convince yourself.
I like it more and more, and that's the sign of a really good movie.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's super nuanced. It's super complex.
And it has something to say.
Well-made film. I mean, so 10.
Yep. Can't say much more than that, I don't think. So I think we'll leave off with that. This has been The Lost Signals does the AFI Top 100. We have just given In the Heat of the Night a perfect 10. And I, of course, have been Scott Thurlow, here with Luis Duran.
Have a good night.
Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Good night.
And Stephen Amosi.
Drive safe.
And we'll see you next time in the Heat of the Night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.